The night I found my baby crying on the porch in a thunderstorm. My own mother slammed the door in my face, and my sister laughed. She thought I'd crawl back like always, but this time, I decided she'd regret it. The rain soaked through his yellow blanket, the one I'd knitted while pregnant, as my 2-year-old son shivered in the cold. My mother's words still echo, "I don't raise bastards." That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped being their victim. My name is Hannah Mercer, and I've worked the night shift at Maple and Grill for 3 years now. That October night started like any other grease burns on my arms, feet aching from 12 hours of carrying plates, and the smell of bacon permanently embedded in my hair. The rain had started around midnight, pounding against the diner windows while truckers nursed their coffee and complained about the weather. By the time I clocked out at 6:30, the storm had turned vicious. Thunder cracked overhead as I ran to my beat-up Honda Civic, my uniform already soaked through. All I could think about was getting home to Eli. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had been watching him overnight, and I knew he'd be waking up soon, asking for his morning milk in that sweet voice that made every brutal shift worth it. The windshield wipers couldn't keep up with the downpour as I navigated the familiar streets of Redford County. Each red light felt like an eternity. Something gnawed at my stomach, not hunger, but that maternal instinct that whispers when something's wrong. I tried calling Mrs. Patterson twice, but the calls went straight to voicemail. When I turned onto Elm Street, I saw Mrs. Patterson's car wasn't in her driveway. My hands started shaking as I pulled up to my mother's house, the house where I'd grown up, where I'd been staying since Eli's father disappeared 2 weeks after I told him I was pregnant. That's when I saw him. My baby, my beautiful 2-year-old son, was sitting on the front porch, in the rain, in nothing but his pajamas and that yellow blanket I'd spent months knitting while he grew inside me. He was sobbing, his little body shaking with cold and fear, reaching his arms toward the locked front door. "Eli," I screamed, throwing myself out of the car without even turning off the engine. I stumbled up the walkway, my work shoes slipping on the wet concrete. When I scooped him into my arms, his skin was like ice. "Baby, baby, I'm here. Mommy's here." His tears mixed with the rain on his face as he buried his head in my neck. "Cold, Mama, so cold." I pounded on the door with my free hand. Eli clutched against my chest. "Mom! Mom! Open the door! What the hell is Eli doing outside?" The door opened just a crack, and there she stood, Lorraine Mercer, my mother, looking as composed as if she were hosting a church luncheon instead of locking her grandson out in a storm. Her gray hair was perfectly styled, her robe pristine. "I told you," she said, her voice cutting through the rain like a blade. "I don't raise bastards." "He's your grandson," I shouted, trying to push past her. "He's 2 years old." That's when Carla appeared behind her, my older sister, still in her nurse scrubs from the hospital. The smirk on her face made my blood boil. "Maybe this will teach you to find appropriate childcare instead of dumping your mistakes on family." "Mrs. Patterson had an emergency," I said through gritted teeth. "She brought him here because she had no choice. How long has he been outside?" Carla actually laughed. "Long enough to learn that choices have consequences." I tried to push through again, just to get Eli somewhere warm and dry, but my mother planted her hand on my chest and shoved hard. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping Eli. "You're not welcome here anymore," Lorraine said. "You made your bed when you spread your legs for that worthless man. Now lie in it." "He's a baby," I screamed. "He could get pneumonia. He could—" The door slammed in my face. I heard the deadbolt turn. I stood there in the rain, Eli whimpering against my shoulder, my mind unable to process what had just happened. My own mother had locked my child outside in a thunderstorm. My sister had laughed about it. "It's okay, baby," I whispered to Eli, walking backward toward my car, rain streaming down my face, or maybe it was tears. I couldn't tell anymore. "Mommy's got you. We're going to be okay." But as I buckled him into his car seat, his lips tinged blue and his little body shivering uncontrollably, I made a promise to myself and to my son. They would pay for this. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But Lorraine Mercer and Carla would learn what happens when you mess with a mother's child. The engine was still running, exhaust mixing with the rain. I cranked up the heat and pulled away from that house, away from the family that had just shown me who they really were. Eli's blanket was soaked through, but I wrapped my jacket around him as best I could while driving. "Where we go, Mama?" he asked in a small voice. I met his eyes in the rearview mirror, those innocent brown eyes that looked nothing like his father's but everything like mine. "Somewhere safe, baby. Somewhere where no one will ever hurt you again." Thunder crashed overhead as if God himself was angry, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was done being afraid. I was done being their victim. This time, they'd pushed too far. This time, I would push back. I drove aimlessly through the storm, Eli's whimpers growing weaker in the back seat. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I tried to think. Where could we go? I had $47 in my wallet and a quarter tank of gas. No friends who could take us in Lorraine had made sure of that over the years, poisoning every relationship I tried to build. The rain was coming down so hard I could barely see 10 feet ahead. I pulled into an abandoned gas station to catch my breath and check on Eli. His skin was still cold, his breathing shallow. Panic clawed at my throat. "We need to get to the hospital," I said to myself, turning back onto the main road. But the hospital was where Carla worked. What if she was still on shift? What if... A horn blared. Headlights filled my vision. I drifted into the opposite lane. I yanked the wheel hard to the right, tires screaming against wet asphalt. The car spun. For a moment, we were weightless, sliding sideways through the rain. I threw my arm back instinctively, trying to shield Eli as we hydroplaned toward the shoulder. We stopped inches from a concrete barrier. The other vehicle, a black SUV, pulled over behind us. My heart hammered as I saw a man get out, shoulders hunched against the rain. This was it. I'd nearly killed us both. Child services would take Eli. Lorraine would win. The man knocked on my window. I rolled it down an inch, rain immediately spraying inside. "Are you hurt?" he shouted over the storm. "Is anyone injured?" We're okay," I managed. He leaned closer, and that's when he saw Eli in the back, wrapped in my work jacket, shivering. His expression changed. "That child needs medical attention. Now." I was trying to get to "I can't." The words wouldn't come. Everything was crashing down. "Follow me," he said firmly. "Mercy General is 5 minutes away. I'll make sure you get there safely." I wanted to refuse, to handle this myself like always, but Eli made a small, pained sound, and my pride crumbled. I nodded. The man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive-looking coat, returned to his SUV and pulled out slowly. I followed, matching his pace through the storm. True to his word, he led us straight to the emergency entrance and even waited while I parked. "Let me help," he said as I struggled to unbuckle Eli with shaking hands. Without waiting for permission, he scooped up my son with practiced ease. "I've got him. You get the doors." We rushed inside, water streaming off us onto the pristine hospital floor. The triage nurse took one look at Eli and immediately called for a wheelchair. As they whisked him away, the man caught my arm. "He'll be okay," he said. "Kids are tougher than we think." I sank into a plastic chair, suddenly aware of how I must look soaked uniform, makeup running, probably reeking of diner grease. "I can't pay," I whispered. "I don't have insurance. I can't." "That's handled," he said simply. "What's your name?" Hannah Mercer." "Nathan Cole." He extended his hand, and I shook it automatically. "What happened? Why was your son out in this weather?" The whole story spilled out. I couldn't stop it. Maybe it was shock, maybe exhaustion, but I told this stranger everything about working nights, about Mrs. Patterson's emergency, about finding Eli on the porch, about my mother's cruelty and my sister's laughter. Nathan's jaw tightened with each word. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked finally. I shook my head, fresh tears burning my eyes. "I'll figure something out. I always do." "No," he said firmly. "You're both coming with me." "I don't even know you." "You're right, but I know what it's like to have nowhere to turn." He pulled out his phone, showed me his driver's license on the screen. "Nathan Cole, owner of Cole Construction. Look me up if you want. Call anyone. But that little boy needs somewhere warm and safe to recover, and you look like you haven't slept in days." "Why would you—" "Because someone should have helped my sister," he said quietly. 20 years ago. Someone should have helped her when our parents kicked her out. But nobody did. A doctor appeared before I could respond. "Mrs. Mercer, your son is stable, mild hypothermia, but we caught it in time. He'll need to stay for observation for a few hours." Relief nearly knocked me off my feet. Nathan steadied me with a hand on my elbow. "See," he said, "he's tough, just like his mom." I spent the next 3 hours by Eli's bedside, watching his color slowly return to normal. Nathan disappeared for a while, returning with coffee and a change of clothes he'd somehow procured from the gift shop sweatpants and a t-shirt that said, "World's Best Mom." "Thought you might want to get out of that uniform," he said simply. When they finally discharged Eli at noon, Nathan was still there. The rain had stopped, weak sunlight filtering through the clouds. My car wouldn't start water in the engine. Probably. "That settles it," Nathan said. "You're coming with me. Doctor said Eli needs rest and warmth. I have a guest house. Full kitchen, 2 bedrooms, completely separate from the main house. Use it as long as you need." I looked down at Eli, drowsy in my arms, trusting me to keep him safe. I'd nearly failed him once today. I wouldn't do it again. "Okay," I whispered. "Just for a few days, until I figure things out." Nathan smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. "Good. Let's get you both somewhere safe." As we drove away in his SUV, Eli sleeping peacefully in a car seat Nathan had produced from somewhere, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. I looked different somehow. Still tired, still scared, but something had changed. I wasn't alone anymore. The guest house was like something out of a magazine, all warm wood floors and soft cream walls, with windows that looked out onto a garden I couldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams. It was bigger than any apartment I'd ever rented, with a full kitchen gleaming with appliances I didn't even know the names of. "This is too much," I said, Eli heavy in my arms as we stood in the doorway. "It's empty otherwise," Nathan replied, setting down the bags of supplies he'd insisted on buying clothes for both of us, groceries, even toys for Eli. "Been empty for 2 years, actually. You'd be doing me a favor by making sure everything still works." That was a lie, and we both knew it, but I was too exhausted to argue. An older woman appeared from the main house, her silver hair pinned back in an elegant bun. She moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd been taking care of others her whole life. "This must be Hannah and Eli," she said warmly. "I'm Mrs. Everett. Mr. Cole asked me to make sure you have everything you need." She reached for Eli with practiced hands, and to my surprise, he went to her without fussing. "What a brave little man," she cooed. "I bet you'd like some warm milk and a proper nap in a real bed. Wouldn't you?" While Mrs. Everett settled Eli into the smaller bedroom already somehow equipped with a toddler bed and soft blue bedding, Nathan showed me around. Every detail had been thought of. Fresh towels in the bathroom, a coffee maker already set up for the morning, even a small desk by the window, in case you need to figure things out, as he put it. "Why are you doing this?" I asked when we were alone in the living room. "Really?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, staring out at the garden. "My sister Sarah was 17 when our parents kicked her out. She was pregnant. They said she'd brought shame on the family." He turned to face me. I was 12, too young to help, too scared to stand up to them. By the time I was old enough to look for her, it was too late. What happened to her? She died, her and the baby both. Complications during delivery at some clinic that... He stopped, jaw working. She was alone. No one should be alone. The weight of his words settled between us. I understood now. This wasn't charity. It was penance. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be sorry. Just be safe. You and Eli, just be safe here. That first night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Eli on that porch, heard my mother's voice, felt the door slam, but when I checked on him 5 times, 10 times he was peaceful, warm, safe. Mrs. Everett had left a nightlight shaped like a moon, and it cast gentle shadows on his face. The next few days blurred together. Mrs. Everett came by each morning, bringing fresh bread or soup, always finding some excuse to hold Eli while I showered or just sat in silence. She never asked questions, never pushed, just showed up with exactly what we needed before I knew we needed it. He's getting his appetite back, she noted on the 4th day, watching Eli devour scrambled eggs. Colors better too. Children bounce back so fast when they feel secure. I wanted to tell her that I didn't feel secure, that I was terrified, that every car passing on the street made me think it was Lorraine coming to take Eli away, but I just nodded and sipped my coffee. Nathan kept his distance mostly, but I saw signs of him. New books would appear on the shelf, parenting guides, legal advice for single mothers. The refrigerator stayed mysteriously stocked. Once, I caught him installing an extra lock on the door. Just routine maintenance, he'd said. On the 7th night, I couldn't sleep again. I found myself at the desk by the window, writing down everything I remembered about finding Eli in the rain. Times, temperatures, exact words spoken. Some instinct told me I'd need these details later. Around 3 a.m., I saw a light on in the main house. Nathan's silhouette moved past a window. He couldn't sleep either, it seemed. I wondered if he ever did, or if Sarah's ghost kept him awake like Eli's near miss haunted me. The next morning, Mrs. Everett brought something besides food, a newspaper. Thought you should see this, she said carefully, placing it on the counter. The local section had a small article about Child Protective Services investigating an incident in our neighborhood. No names, but I knew. Someone had reported what happened. Maybe a neighbor who'd seen Eli on the porch. My hands shook as I read. This could go either way. They could help me protect Eli, or they could decide I was an unfit mother for leaving him in my family's care. Breathe, Mrs. Everett said gently. You did nothing wrong, and you're not alone in this. But I felt alone, completely, utterly alone except for the kindness of strangers who owed me nothing. I looked around the guest house at Eli's toys scattered on the clean floor, at the food I hadn't paid for in the refrigerator, at the roof over our heads that could disappear at any moment. I need to go back to work, I said suddenly. I need to be able to take care of us. When you're ready, Mrs. Everett said, not a moment before. That night, I lay in bed listening to Eli's peaceful breathing from the next room. For the first time since finding him in the rain, I let myself really think about what came next. I couldn't hide here forever. Lorraine and Carla were still out there. They still had power over me, the power of family, of knowing all my weaknesses, of being able to hurt me through Eli. But something was different now. I was different. The terrified girl who'd accepted their cruelty for years was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone who'd seen what they were capable of and survived it. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for legal aid. First thing tomorrow, I'd call. I'd find out what rights I had, what protection I could get. Because Mrs. Everett was right. I wasn't alone anymore. And I was done letting Lorraine and Carla control my life. 2 weeks had passed since the night in the rain. I'd returned to my shifts at Maple and Grill, working lunch instead of nights so I could be home with Eli in the evenings. The regulars asked where I'd been, but I kept my answers vague. Nathan had offered to help with childcare costs, and Mrs. Everett watched Eli while I worked. For the first time in years, life felt almost manageable. I should have known it wouldn't last. It was a busy Thursday lunch rush when they walked in. The bell above the door chimed, and there they were, Lorraine in her pressed church dress, Carla in designer scrubs that probably cost more than I made in a week. They chose a booth in my section, of course. My manager Tony caught my arm as I froze by the coffee station. "You okay, Hannah? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I lied, grabbing my order pad. "Just fine." I approached their table with my heart hammering against my ribs. "What can I get you?" Lorraine looked up slowly, as if just noticing me. Well, still slinging hash. I see. Some people never do learn to better themselves. "Today's special is the meatloaf," I said evenly. "Comes with 2 sides." Carla laughed, that same cruel sound from the night on the porch. "She's pretending she doesn't know us. How precious." "I know exactly who you are," I said quietly. "Would you like to order or not?" Lorraine's eyes narrowed. Such attitude. No wonder you can't keep a man. Speaking of which, I heard you found yourself a new sugar daddy. The coal construction owner. Isn't it? The words hit like a slap, but I kept my face neutral. How did she know about Nathan? "Are you ready to order?" I repeated. "I'll have the Caesar salad," Carla said with mock sweetness. "Mother will have the soup. And Hannah, you might want to check your phone. I believe you've been served." My blood ran cold. I reached for my phone in my apron pocket, but Tony appeared at my elbow. "Hannah, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." A man in a cheap suit stood by the hostess stand, holding a manila envelope. Process server. I knew before he even opened his mouth. "Hannah Mercer," he asked. "Yes." "You've been served." He handed me the envelope and walked out. I stood there holding it, aware that half the diner was watching. Lorraine and Carla sat smirking in their booth, enjoying the show they'd orchestrated. "Take your break," Tony said gently. "I'll have Marcus cover your tables." I stumbled into the break room and tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Petition for grandparent visitation rights. Lorraine was suing for court-ordered access to Eli, claiming I was denying her a relationship with her grandson. The document painted me as unstable, vindictive, possibly abusive. It mentioned my history of poor decision-making and exposure of the minor child to inappropriate living situations. That's when I saw it a reference to my current address. They knew where we were staying. They knew about Nathan. I called the legal aid number I'd saved but never dialed. Busy signal. I tried again, and again. On the 4th try, I got through to a harried receptionist who informed me they had a 3-week wait for appointments. "This is an emergency," I pleaded. "It involves my son." "All our cases are emergencies. Ma'am, 3 weeks is the best I can do." I hung up and called Nathan instead. He answered on the first ring. "They found us," I said without preamble. "My mother. She's filed for visitation rights. She's trying to—" "Where are you?" "Work. They came here. They served me at work. Nathan. In front of everyone." "I'm sending someone to pick you up. Don't go back out there. Just wait." "I can't just leave." "Hannah," his voice was firm. "Trust me. Just wait." 20 minutes later, a black town car pulled up outside the employee entrance. The driver knew my name, knew where to go. I spent the ride reading and rereading the court documents, each word making me feel sicker. Nathan was waiting at the house with another man older, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. "Hannah, this is David Hensley," Nathan said. "He's going to help." David shook my hand firmly. "I've reviewed the situation. May I see the documents?" I handed them over, watching his face as he read. His expression never changed, but something in his eyes sharpened. This is harassment, pure and simple, he said finally. The petition is full of allegations but short on facts. However, we need to take it seriously. Family court can be unpredictable. I can't afford. You can't afford not to fight this properly, David interrupted. Nathan has retained my services. No arguments. I looked at Nathan, tears burning my eyes. You can't keep. Yes, I can, he said simply, and I will. David pulled out a legal pad. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Every interaction with your mother and sister, every threat, every incident. We're going to document all of it. For the next 2 hours, I talked. David asked pointed questions, took detailed notes, occasionally exchanging glances with Nathan when I described particularly cruel incidents. By the time we finished, I felt wrung out, exhausted. They made a mistake, David said finally. Serving you at your workplace, making a scene that's harassment, and this reference to your living situation if they've been surveilling you or hiring someone to do so, that's another issue entirely. So we can fight this. We're not just going to fight it, David said with a cold smile. We're going to use it. Your mother wants to play legal games. Fine, but she just opened a door she's going to wish she'd left closed. That night, after Eli was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. Mrs. Everett had left. The legal papers were spread out before me, but I wasn't reading them anymore. I was thinking about Lorraine's face in the diner, that satisfied smirk when the process server appeared. She thought she'd won, thought she could waltz into my workplace, humiliate me, threaten to take my son, and I'd crumble like I always had before. But she'd miscalculated. She didn't know about Nathan, about David, about the new steel in my spine forged from finding my baby in the rain. She didn't know that she'd finally pushed me too far. I picked up my phone and opened the Notes app, starting a new document titled Evidence. David had said to document everything, so I would. Every cruel word, every slammed door, every time she'd made me feel worthless. Lorraine wanted a fight. She was about to get one. David Hensley's office smelled like leather and old books. I sat across from him, watching as he arranged photos on his desk, screenshots from my phone, printed emails, even a weather report from the night Eli was locked outside. Evidence wins cases, he said, adjusting his glasses. But in family court, it's not just about what happened. It's about controlling the narrative. What do you mean? Your mother filed first. That means she gets to tell her story, paint herself as the concerned grandmother being denied access to her grandchild. He leaned back in his chair. We need to flip that narrative. Show the court who she really is. How? First, we file a counterpetition, not just defending against her claims, but seeking a restraining order based on child endangerment. Second, we gather witness statements. Do you know any of your neighbors who might have seen Eli that night? I thought back to that horrible morning. Maybe Mrs. Chen from across. I stopped. I mean, Mrs. Rodriguez. She's always up early, walking her dog. David made a note. Good. Anyone else? The mailman mentioned seeing Eli on the porch when I ran into him last week. He seemed concerned. Excellent. Federal employees make strong witnesses. David pulled out a thick folder. Now, let's talk about your sister. Nathan's investigator did some digging. Nathan hired an investigator. He's thorough. David opened the folder. Carla has been quite active on social media. Posted some interesting things the night of the incident. He showed me a screenshot. Carla's Facebook post from 11:47 p.m. That night. Some people never learn. Family tries to help, but you can't save someone who won't save themselves. Not my problem anymore. That's vague, I said. By itself? Yes. But look at this comment thread. He showed me another screenshot. One of Carla's friends had asked what happened. Carla's response. Let's just say someone got a wake-up call about personal responsibility. Sometimes you have to let people hit rock bottom. She's talking about Eli, I whispered. About leaving him outside. Combined with the timestamp and weather data showing the storm started at 11 p.m., it's compelling. David set the papers aside. But we need more. I want you to think back. Has your mother ever threatened you in writing text messages, emails, anything? I pulled out my phone, scrolling back through months of messages. Most of our communication had been verbal, but then I found it, 3 months ago, when I'd asked to borrow $50 for Eli's medicine. Absolutely not. Maybe if you can't afford to medicate your child, you shouldn't have custody of him. Some people are fit to be mothers and some aren't. David photographed the message. Perfect. What about witnesses to her behavior over the years? I kept to myself mostly. She made sure of that. I paused. But my old boss at the grocery store, Mr. Patel, he saw her scream at me once when I was pregnant, called me trash in front of customers. We'll contact him. David leaned forward. Hannah, I need you to understand something. Your mother is used to controlling you through shame and fear, but courtrooms operate on facts and law. She can't shame a judge into giving her what she wants. What if she lies, says I'm making it all up? That's why we document everything. Starting now, I want you to keep a daily log. Every interaction, every drive-by of Nathan's house. Yes, we've noticed the blue sedan, every attempt at contact. Download a call recording app for your phone. Illinois is a 2-party consent state, but you can still document threats. I felt overwhelmed. This is really happening. She's really trying to take my son. She's trying to control you through your son, David corrected. There's a difference. And Hannah, she's already lost. She just doesn't know it yet. That evening, I did as David instructed. I started my log, writing down everything I could remember. Times, dates, exact words. The pattern became clearer with each entry. Years of subtle threats, financial manipulation, isolation tactics. Nathan found me at the kitchen table at midnight, surrounded by notebooks and printed emails. You should sleep, he said gently. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I think of something else she did, something else I need to write down. I looked up at him. Why didn't I see it before? Why did I let her treat us this way for so long? Because she's your mother, Nathan said simply. We're programmed to love our parents, to seek their approval. It's not weakness, Hannah. It's human nature. She locked my baby outside. My voice cracked. What kind of grandmother does that? The kind who's about to learn what consequences look like. The next morning, David called with updates. Mrs. Rodriguez had agreed to provide a statement. She'd not only seen Eli outside, but had considered calling the police before seeing me arrive. The mailman, Tom Willis, was willing to testify as well. And here's the interesting part, David said. I had my clerk pull property records. Your mother doesn't own that house. She's been renting it for the past 5 years, but in her filing, she claims to provide a stable family home for Eli. She always acted like she owned it, I said, surprised. Made me pay rent like I was some tenant instead of her daughter. Which raises questions about where that money went. Financial exploitation is another angle we can explore. I heard papers shuffling. One more thing. The investigator found something interesting about the night in question. There's a traffic camera at the intersection of Elm and 3rd. It might have captured you arriving home that morning. Hope bloomed in my chest. That would show the timeline. Prove how long Eli was outside. Exactly. We're requesting the footage now. David's voice grew serious. Hannah, your mother's attorney reached out. They want to discuss a settlement. Supervised visitation once a month in exchange for dropping the suit. No. The word came out harder than I expected. She doesn't get to terrorize my child and then demand access to him. That's what I told them. But I need you to be prepared. They're going to escalate. Your mother doesn't strike me as someone who accepts rejection well. He was right. That afternoon, while I was giving Eli lunch, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment. I answered. You ungrateful little bitch. Lorraine's voice was pure venom. How dare you turn my own neighbors against me? I hit the record button on the app David had recommended. Don't contact me directly. Mother, all communication needs to go through. I raised you, I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me by spreading lies. You locked my son outside in a thunderstorm. I was teaching you both a lesson about consequences, something you clearly never learned. Her voice dropped lower. End this now, Hannah. Give me what I want, or I'll make your life hell. You think you're safe with your rich boyfriend. You think he'll stick around when he realizes what trash you really are. Goodbye, Mother. Don't you dare hang up on... I ended the call, my hands shaking. But underneath the old fear was something new. Satisfaction. She'd just given me exactly what David needed, a recorded threat. Proof of her true nature. I saved the file and emailed it to David immediately. Then I went back to making Eli's lunch, cutting his sandwich into triangles just the way he liked. Lorraine thought she could still control me, still reduce me to that scared girl who accepted her cruelty. But that girl was gone. In her place stood a mother who'd found her strength in the worst moment of her life. And I was just getting started. The courtroom smelled like floor polish and fear. I sat beside David at the respondents' table, my hands folded to hide their trembling. Across the aisle, Lorraine perched like a queen in her Sunday best, pearl necklace gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Carla sat behind her, tapping on her phone with perfectly manicured nails. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Winters, the bailiff announced. Judge Winters was younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She settled into her chair and opened the file before her. We're here for a preliminary hearing in the matter of Mercer versus Mercer, petition for grandparent visitation rights. She looked up. Counsel, please identify yourselves. Lorraine's attorney stood first, a thin man with a practiced smile. Robert Fitzgerald for the petitioner. Your Honor. David Hensley for the respondent. Mr. Fitzgerald, you may present your opening statement. Fitzgerald painted a picture that made my stomach turn. In his version, I was an unstable single mother who'd cruelly cut off my loving mother's access to her grandson. He mentioned my unstable living situation, my minimum wage job, and my pattern of poor decision-making. Mrs. Lorraine Mercer simply wants to be part of her grandson's life, he concluded. She's asking for reasonable visitation to maintain that crucial family bond. David stood slowly, commanding the room without raising his voice. Your Honor, we'll show that far from being a loving grandmother. Mrs. Lorraine Mercer engaged in child endangerment so severe it borders on criminal. On the night of October 15th, she deliberately locked a 2-year-old child outside during a Category 2 thunderstorm. Lorraine's attorney objected immediately. That's an inflammatory mischaracterization. I have witnesses, Your Honor. David continued calmly. Multiple neighbors who saw the child alone on the porch in the storm. We also have traffic camera footage showing my client arriving home at 6:42 a.m., and the child was already outside, soaked and hypothermic. Judge Winters leaned forward. You have this footage? Exhibit A, Your Honor. David handed copies to the clerk. Additionally, we have medical records from Mercy General showing Eli Mercer was treated for mild hypothermia that morning. I watched Lorraine's face tighten. She hadn't expected us to be prepared. Mr. Fitzgerald, do you dispute that the child was outside during the storm? My client was disciplining her daughter. Your Honor, the child was never in real danger. A 2-year-old Judge Winters' voice sharpened. You're arguing that leaving a toddler outside in a thunderstorm constitutes acceptable discipline. Fitzgerald scrambled. My client has raised 2 daughters successfully. She knows how to care for children. Then let's hear from one of those daughters, David said. We'd like to call Carla Mercer as a hostile witness. Carla's smirk vanished. She looked at Lorraine, who gave a sharp nod. As Carla took the stand, I noticed her confidence wavering. Miss Mercer, David began after she was sworn in. Were you present on the night of October 15th? Yes. And did you see your nephew, Eli, outside during the storm? Carla shifted. I saw him briefly. How briefly? I don't know. A few minutes. David pulled out his phone. I'd like to submit Exhibit B, Your Honor. Screenshots from Miss Mercer's social media. He handed copies to the clerk. Miss Mercer, did you post on Facebook at 11:47 p.m. that night? Carla's face flushed. I don't remember. Let me refresh your memory. You wrote, some people never learn. Family tries to help, but you can't save someone who won't save themselves. Not my problem anymore. Is that correct? People post things, and when asked by a friend what happened, you responded, let's just say someone got a wake-up call about personal responsibility. Sometimes you have to let people hit rock bottom. Were you referring to your sister? Yes. And by rock bottom, you meant finding her child locked outside in a storm. Fitzgerald objected, but the damage was done. Carla's own words hung in the air. I didn't mean, Carla started. Did you laugh? Miss Mercer, when your sister begged to bring her son inside, did you laugh? Carla's silence was answer enough. David turned to the judge. Your Honor, we have additional evidence. The respondent has been subjected to ongoing harassment, including direct threats from the petitioner. He played the recording of Lorraine's phone call. Her voice filled the courtroom. I'll make your life hell. You think you're safe with your rich boyfriend. You think he'll stick around when he realizes what trash you really are. Lorraine's face went white. Even Fitzgerald looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Mercer. Judge Winters addressed Lorraine directly. Did you make this call? Lorraine lifted her chin. I was upset. My daughter is keeping my grandson from me. By seeking a safe environment after you locked him outside. The judge's tone could have frozen water. Mr. Hensley, do you have anything else? Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call Mrs. Elena Rodriguez. Mrs. Rodriguez took the stand, clearly nervous but determined. In halting English, she described seeing Eli on the porch that night. What time did you first notice him? David asked gently. I wake up at 4:30, always, to walk Peanut my dog. The little boy was there, crying, all wet from rain. What did you do? I knock on door. Nobody answer. I think about calling police, but then I see Hannah drive up. She run to him like crazy woman, so scared for her baby. How long do you think he was outside? Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head sadly. When I go to bed at 11 p.m., I hear him crying already. So, all night. Maybe. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even Judge Winters looked shocked. David wasn't finished. He called Tom Willis, the mailman, who confirmed seeing Eli outside on multiple occasions when Lorraine was supposedly babysitting. Then came the emergency room doctor who treated Eli. His core body temperature was 94 degrees. Dr. Martinez testified. Any lower and we'd have been looking at serious complications, possibly fatal ones. By the time David rested our case, Lorraine's carefully constructed image was in ruins. Fitzgerald tried to salvage things, calling Lorraine to testify about her love for her grandson, but her answers sounded hollow after what we'd heard. I need some time to review this evidence, Judge Winters announced. We'll take a 30-minute recess. Those 30 minutes felt like hours. I paced the hallway while David made phone calls. Nathan had wanted to come, but David thought it better if he didn't. No need to give Fitzgerald ammunition about my rich boyfriend. When we returned, Judge Winters looked grim. I've reviewed the evidence, and I'm deeply disturbed by what I've seen. She looked directly at Lorraine. Mrs. Mercer, not only am I denying your petition for visitation rights, but I'm granting the respondent's request for a restraining order. You are to have no contact with Hannah Mercer or Eli Mercer. Your Honor, Fitzgerald started. I'm not finished. Based on the evidence presented, I'm referring this case to the state's attorney for possible criminal charges of child endangerment. She turned to me. Ms. Mercer, you and your son deserve to feel safe. This court will ensure that happens. The gavel came down with finality. Lorraine erupted. You can't do this. He's my grandson. I have rights. Bailiff, Judge Winters said calmly. As court officers moved toward Lorraine, she turned on me. You'll regret this. Hannah, you think you've won. You've destroyed this family. No. Mother, I said, finding my voice at last. You did that all by yourself. The restraining order should have been the end of it. But I knew my mother better than that. Lorraine Mercer had never accepted defeat in her life, and she wasn't about to start now. She'll retaliate, I told David as we sat in his office the day after the hearing. She can't help herself. David nodded thoughtfully. Which is why we're going to be ready. I've already filed copies of the restraining order with your workplace and Eli's daycare. But Hannah, we need to think bigger. What do you mean? He pulled out a fresh legal pad. Your mother made a critical error in that courtroom. The judge referred her for criminal prosecution. That means the state's attorney will be investigating. They'll want to talk to you. Good, I'll tell them everything. Yes, but that's reactive. I'm suggesting we be proactive. He leaned back. Tell me about the rent you paid your mother. How much? How often? $500 a month, sometimes more if she said utilities were high. I laughed bitterly. I found out yesterday she only pays $800 for the whole house? So you were essentially paying 60% of her rent while she claimed you were a burden. David made notes. Did you ever sign a lease? Get receipts? No, she said family doesn't need paperwork. Of course she did. He tapped his pen against the desk. Nathan mentioned you've been documenting everything. May I see? I handed over my notebook pages and pages of memories, dates, incidents. David's eyes sharpened as he read. This bit here, about her taking your tax refund when Eli was born. She said I owed her for letting me stay there while pregnant. $2,300. Which was your entire refund. Did she claim you as a dependent? My stomach dropped. I don't know. She always did my taxes. Said I was too stupid to understand the forms. David's smile was predatory. We're going to request copies of those tax returns. If she claimed you as a dependent while charging you rent, that's fraud. If she took your refund while you were eligible for earned income credit, that's theft. You think the IRS would care about someone like me? The IRS cares about tax fraud, period. He continued reading. These messages from Carla are interesting too. Threats, harassment. Has she contacted you since the restraining order? Not directly, but I pulled out my phone, showing him screenshots. She's been posting about me on Facebook, not using my name, but it's obvious. The posts were vintage Carla. Some people play victim their whole lives. Karma always finds ungrateful bitches. Can't wait for the truth to come out. Perfect, David said. She's building our harassment case for us. There was a knock on the door. David's secretary entered with a folder. Mr. Hensley, this just came from the state's attorney's office. David scanned the contents and smiled. They're moving forward with charges against your mother, child endangerment in the 2nd degree. They want to meet with you tomorrow. That night, I sat with Nathan on the guest house porch while Eli played with trucks in the garden. I'd told him we were staying with friends while our house got fixed. He was too young to understand restraining orders and criminal charges. You're quiet, Nathan observed. I'm planning, I admitted. David says we need to be proactive. I keep thinking about all the times she hurt me, hurt Eli, and got away with it. All the money she stole, all the lies she told. And you want justice? I want more than that. The words surprised me, but they were true. I want her to feel what I felt, powerless, humiliated, afraid. Nathan was quiet for a moment. That's natural, but be careful that revenge doesn't consume you. It's not revenge, I said. It's consequences. For the first time in her life, Lorraine Mercer is going to face consequences. The next morning, I met with Assistant State's Attorney Maria Santos. She was young, sharp, and angry on my behalf. The medical records alone are damning, she said. But combined with the witness statements and that social media post from your sister, we have a strong case. What happens next? Your mother will be arrested, probably within the week. She'll be arraigned, and given the evidence, I doubt she'll get away with just probation. Maria leaned forward. But I need you to prepare yourself. Your mother's attorney will try to paint you as vindictive, coaching witnesses, exaggerating the danger. Let them try, I said. I have the truth on my side. Good. Now, tell me about other incidents. The prosecutor in me suspects this wasn't the first time she endangered your son. I told her about the times Lorraine had left Eli in his crib for hours, claiming babies needed to self-soothe, about finding him once in a soiled diaper so bad he had a rash that took weeks to heal, about her refusing to give him his asthma medication because she didn't believe in drugging children. Maria took notes furiously. Why didn't you report this before? Because she was my mother, I said simply, and she convinced me I was the problem, that I was too sensitive, too weak, too stupid to know how to raise my own son. Gaslighting, Maria said. Classic abuser tactic. Hannah, I'm going to recommend additional charges. Pattern of abuse, medical neglect. Your mother isn't going to walk away from this. That evening, Mrs. Rodriguez stopped by with cookies for Eli. As he munched happily, she pulled me aside. I see in the newspaper, she said quietly. About court case. I am proud of you. Hannah. Takes courage to stand up to family. Thank you for testifying. I know it wasn't easy. She patted my hand. I had daughter once. Long time ago. Her father. My husband then. He was not good man. I didn't protect her like I should. She ran away at 16. Never came back. Tears glistened in her eyes. I see you protect your boy, and I think maybe I help one mother be brave like I wasn't. After she left, I found David's business card and dialed his number. I want to explore the financial fraud angle, I said without preamble, and I want to contact that reporter who was at the courthouse, the one from the Herald. You want to go public? My mother spent years telling everyone in town I was trash, that I was an unfit mother, a burden. I watched Eli building a tower with his blocks, safe and happy. It's time people knew the truth about Lorraine Mercer. I'll make some calls, David said. But Hannah, once this story breaks, there's no going back. Your mother will be publicly exposed. Her reputation will be destroyed. Good, I said, and meant it. She destroyed mine first. Now it's her turn to see how it feels. I hung up and opened my laptop, creating a new document titled Financial Records. If we were going to take down Lorraine Mercer, we were going to do it completely. No stone unturned, no lie unexposed. She'd created this war the night she locked my baby in the rain. Now I was going to finish it. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when we arrived for Lorraine's criminal trial. Word had spread through Redford County like wildfire the respected Lorraine Mercer, pillar of the community, charged with child endangerment, tax fraud, and financial exploitation of a dependent. Hannah, how does it feel to see your mother in handcuffs? A reporter shouted. I kept walking, David's hand on my elbow guiding me through the chaos. Inside, the courtroom was packed. I recognized faces from church, from the grocery store, from years of my mother holding court and spreading her poison about what a disappointment I was. Today, they'd learn the truth. Lorraine sat at the defendant's table in a gray pantsuit, trying to maintain her dignity. But I saw the cracks, the tremor in her hands, the way she kept touching her hair. Without her pearls and perfect makeup, she looked smaller, older, ordinary. Carla wasn't there. She'd been arrested 2 days prior on harassment charges after showing up at the guest house despite the restraining order, screaming threats until Nathan called the police. The Facebook posts had been her downfall. The prosecutor used them to show a pattern of intimidation. Assistant State's Attorney Santos presented the case methodically. The weather reports, the medical records, the traffic camera footage showing me arriving home to find Eli already outside. Mrs. Rodriguez testified again, her voice stronger this time. The ER doctor explained how close Eli had come to serious harm. Then came the financial evidence. 5 years of tax returns showing Lorraine had claimed me as a dependent while collecting rent, bank records showing deposits matching my tax refunds. text messages demanding money for imaginary expenses. The defendant systematically exploited her daughter's trust, Santos told the jury. She used financial abuse to maintain control, emotional abuse to break her spirit, and ultimately, she used a 2-year-old child as a weapon of manipulation. Lorraine's attorney tried to paint her as a grandmother pushed too far, making one terrible mistake in a moment of frustration. But the evidence was overwhelming. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, Lorraine finally broke. "Hannah!" she screamed as the bailiffs moved to take her away. "How could you do this to your mother? I gave you everything." "No," I said, standing up. "You took everything, but not anymore." The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison, 2 suspended, plus 5 years probation and mandatory counseling. She'd serve at least a year, maybe more. The financial crimes alone carried heavy fines that would wipe out her savings. Outside the courthouse, the reporter from the Herald caught up with me. "Ms. Mercer, how does it feel to have justice?" I thought about it for a moment. It feels like freedom. For the first time in my life, I'm free. The story ran the next day. Local woman exposes years of abuse, financial fraud by prominent mother. It included everything: the tax fraud, the child endangerment, the systematic abuse. By evening, it had been picked up by regional news stations. My phone rang nonstop. Old classmates who'd believed my mother's lies about me. Distant relatives who'd always wondered why I'd turned out so badly. All of them suddenly understanding that Lorraine Mercer wasn't the saint she'd pretended to be. Carla pleaded guilty to harassment to avoid jail time. She got probation and community service, plus a permanent restraining order. Her nursing license was suspended pending review. The hospital where she worked quietly suggested she resign. A week later, I was back at Maple and Grill, working the lunch shift. Tony had welcomed me back with open arms, and the regulars treated me like a hero. As I poured coffee for Mr. Jacobson, he patted my hand. "Always knew that mother of yours was a piece of work," he said. "Glad you finally stood up to her." That evening, Nathan and I sat watching Eli play in the garden. We'd started looking at apartments it was time to stand on my own feet, though Nathan insisted we take our time finding the right place. "Any regrets?" he asked. I thought about Lorraine in her jail cell, about Carla's nursing career in ruins, about the family I'd destroyed, or rather, the family that had destroyed itself. "No," I said honestly. "They made their choices. Every cruel word, every slammed door, every moment they made me feel worthless. They thought I'd always be their victim." "But you're not." "No, I'm not." I smiled, watching Eli chase a butterfly. I'm a survivor. And more importantly, I'm a mother who protected her child. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "IRS audit found additional fraud. Lorraine owes $47,000 in back taxes and penalties. Her house is being seized." I showed Nathan, who whistled low. "The hits keep coming." "She always said I'd end up on the streets," I said. "Funny how that worked out." Later that night, I tucked Eli into bed. He was thriving now, talking more, laughing easily, no longer flinching at raised voices. He'd probably never remember that terrible night in the rain, and I was grateful for that. "Love you, Mama," he said sleepily. "Love you too, baby, always and forever." I stood in his doorway for a moment, watching him drift off to sleep. Safe, warm, protected. Everything I'd failed to give him before, but would never fail at again. My phone rang an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hannah." The voice was broken, barely recognizable. "It's Mom." "You're not supposed to contact me." "I know. I wanted you to know I'm sorry." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you're in jail. You're not sorry for what you did. You took everything from me." "No. Mother, you took everything from yourself. I just stopped letting you take from me." I hung up and blocked the number. There would be no reconciliation, no tearful reunion. Some bridges were meant to stay burned. A month later, the guest house was just a memory. Eli and I had our own apartment, small, but ours. I'd gotten a raise at work and was taking online classes in the evenings. Nathan still came by for dinner twice a week, and Mrs. Everett babysat when I had to study. The woman who'd stood in the rain that October night, broken and afraid, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who'd learned that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up when you need them most. Lorraine had slammed a door in my face that night, but she'd opened another one, a door to freedom, to justice, to a life where Eli and I could thrive without fear. And we walked through it together, into the light. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with those of you who've faced similar struggles with toxic family members. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to connect with you in the comments below. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share your thoughts. Your own experiences matter, and you never know who might need to hear that they're not alone.